Good evening, this is News.PH, but it's not politics as usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. Next week on Monday and Tuesday, September 15 and 16 at 8 o'clock in the evening, 9 News premieres a two-part special, EDSA, The Full Story. That's what we talk about tonight. Given EDSA's myriad of problems, there is much to discuss. Our guests, a historian from the University of the Philippines and the director of the Third World Studies Center, Professor Ricardo Jose, and the very famous urban and environmental planner, architect Felino June Palafox. Thank you, sir, Architect Palafox and Professor Jose. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Pia. Thank you, Pia, for inviting us again.
Yeah. I guess everybody can say that we've all been traumatized by EDSA. Yes. Yes. Nakakapagod na ba?
Yeah, and what's sad about it is I had the opportunity to come out with in a team of World Bank funded project, Metroplan Manila, 1976.
Yes, you keep repeating this.
I was 26 years old then. Now I'm 64, it's still the same. And I've helped 38 countries already after 1976.
Yeah. Okay, so what's our problem? We're very creative and imaginative about solutions. We know what we need to fix, and yet we cannot seem, when I say we, I mean government and people all together, no? As a nation. We can't seem to fix it. Ano bang problema natin?
It's really, we should look at the wider context. EDSA is one of the 6 circumferential roads put forward by the American Corps of Engineers in 1945. And EDSA was going to circumferential road number 4, 54 meters wide, to built in 1954. That's why it was Highway 54. It was supposed to be a transportation corridor. Now it's everything. It's also a destination. In fact, EDSA now is being an urban laboratory as a case study for how not to do it all over the world. All over the world. They come and see me, what's the problem and what's the solution.
How not to do it.
Including students of architecture, urban planning from Yale, from Cornell, from the UK, from Europe. And
how seriously, sir, they really come here and ask and look and check what is it about EDSA. This is not what we should do.
Yeah, how not to do it.
How not to do
the whole corridor of EDSA. Like for instance, there are a hierarchy of roads, and the major thoroughfares are the highest. And where are the collector roads, distributor roads, access roads? They are in gated communities and gated military camps. So there are no parallel roads to EDSA. And we over-concentrate there. But we should not just look at traffic management, traffic engineering solutions. We should look at a wider urban planning aspect, the land use, then transportation planning, traffic engineering, and traffic management. I think our traffic planners and policymakers, they're only looking at traffic management and traffic engineering, not the urban land use transport, because they're only looking at the supply side. The demand side is the land use. Let's say, for instance, the Makati Central Business District, is the daytime population is 11 times the nighttime population. So how to bring in 11 times population in the morning?
And how to bring them
out.
Yeah.
And other central business districts in the world, like in Manhattan, Nathan Road, Hong Kong, Orchard Road, Singapore, every 70 meters or 200 feet, there's an access road. Whereas here, the access is, you have to go around the 2-kilometer walls of the villages. The same thing in Ortigas with Green Hills and all of that. So it's the wrong land use planning. And because the land use is the demand.
Yeah.
So what being addressed now is the supply.
Yeah.
The buses, the roads, and so on. And then every year, the sale of cars is 35% increase annually. Is our transportation corridors, road corridors, 35% increasing capacity every year. And then there are 20 kinds of urban transport. Until now, the priority is the automobile. In 1976 Metro Plan, we had proposed congestion charging. At certain times of day, there's congestion charging. We could have done it around 1 year after Singapore, even before London. It's not done yet. And maybe even the vehicles coming into Metro Manila, maybe the tollways. You double the toll coming in, free going out. So it can be a package. And then EDSA again is how not to do it. There are 13 MRT stations. Elsewhere in the world, if you're in New York, London, Paris, Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, walkable distance from the transit stations are higher density housing. So you have more people within walkable distance. When we were doing the architecture master plan of Rockwell, a survey was that we Metro Manilans, we walk only 400 meters. And the LRT stations are 1.2 kilometers. So if there were only 800 meters, 400 meters in between, maybe people would walk, improve the sidewalks and so on. And our road corridors, they're all a big mistake. A street is 1/3 for trees and landscaping, 1/3 for pedestrians and bicycles, and only 1/3 for the moving traffic vehicles. So Commonwealth Avenue, EDSA, all our roads are wrongly designed.
Well, that ends the show tonight. Just kidding. Oh my God. Yung sinabi niyo pa lang na how not to do it, para bang, Diyos ko, wala, ano pa bang magagawa na? I mean, when we look back, let's go back again. Let's go back history, di ba? I mean, it was 1939 when President Quezon started this north-south circumferential road.
Yes. Actually, what EDSA is now was actually designed as a circumferential road to bypass Manila.
Right.
In fact, I was comparing notes because in Washington, D.C., you have the Beltway. The Beltway, you circumvent the whole thing. So Manila was getting very crowded by the late 1930s, and so they felt something has to be done to ease the traffic and to make it more accessible from outside Manila. That's why they created the draft plan of EDSA. So it's a pre-war plan, actually. And in fact, by 1941, it was just about complete. Not what it is today, but where it is, I think, from where SM North is to about.
But of course, at the time, we didn't have all those.
That's right.
Commercial establishments, all those gated communities. But nothing,
There was nothing. So it was really a futuristic thing. And remember, Quezon City was still being planned. There was nothing in Quezon City, basically, at that time. So this was a futuristic thing. So it was moving outwards. And at that point in time, they were still thinking in terms of the city and the suburbs. So people would move from the suburbs to the city. And then you'd have this circumferential road, bypass the traffic. And then you'd have some roads getting to the center. But, well, of course, everything was destroyed during World War II. And in fact, parts of what's now EDSA were used as airfields because it was so wide and so flat. It was a circumferential road in the sense that also, when the war started and Manila was declared an open city, the troops coming from the south were ordered to take that road because it was outside Manila. Manila was open city, so they could safely pass through that. And so that was
there's this terrain handbook, which I will show in the documentary.
Yes, that's right.
Where Route 54 is identified for the
that's right.
American soldiers.
Highway 54. In fact, if I may interrupt, we go back into history. The Intramuros, Extramuros, from the loss of the Indies of the Spaniards. Intramuros, if you were Ilustrado and Principalia, inside the walls. If you were a peasant, Indio or Sanglay, Extramuros, outside the walls. And that's almost 500 years already. if you look at our gated communities, these are the intramuroses and extramuroses are the employees. So the employees of Makati, they spend at least 1,000 hours a year in traffic because they are priced out of the housing stock in Makati. I think also around Ortigas, they are priced out. And again, the Daniel Burnham Plan, 1905, the American planner who did revised the plan of Washington, D.C. and Chicago, 1909, and also Baguio. The Daniel Burnham Plan, his inspiration was Paris and Venice. Paris, you live upstairs, you shop downstairs, wide boulevards, use the Pasig River a la River Seine, the esteros of Manila, the canals of Venice, and Manila Bay, the Bay of Naples. While the Americans were here, were following the Daniel Burnham Plan. And when the Americans left, we copied erroneously Hollywood and Los Angeles. and Hollywood and Los Angeles, they are designed for the automobile. And I met already 3 mayors of Los Angeles. And they announced to the rest of the world, Los Angeles is a 6-year-old mistakes in planning. So I went to see all of them, have conversation afterwards. Mr. Mayor, congratulations. And thanks for sharing to the rest of the world the Los Angeles planning is 6-year-old mistake. And they said they were sending away their planners and architects to London, Paris, New York, Curitiba, Brazil, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. And after the 1973 OPEC oil crisis, the rest of the world changed into more public transit, walkable, bikeable, and penalize the use of the car. And yet our transport policy now is still for the automobile. What's his name? Andres Duani, a colleague in the American Institute of Planners, American Institute of Architects, who was here, he's a new urbanist. You know his comment about the skyways? It's just like cheating on your diet by loosening your belt. Then experts naman from England, Freeman Fox, which I work in Metroplan Manila, they say the road network is like a chain. It is as strong as the weakest link. And the weakest links are the intersections. We don't know how to use intersections. Everybody's there.
We know how to clog.
we know how to clog intersections.
That yellow box, you always wonder why is everybody inside the yellow box.
Then the tollways, they are capacities as strong as the exits and entrance and exits, the toll plazas, the ramps. So no matter how well you do them, that it will be determined. So all these skyways now, there will be elevated parking lots in 10 to 15 years. Maybe it's already starting to happen.
Yeah, well, that's what we can actually see today, hindi ba? All right, we'll have to take a short break. Please stay with us. News.PH will be right back. We're talking about EDSA and Metro Manila. Welcome back to News.PH. We're talking about EDSA. And on Monday, like I said, Monday and Tuesday, September 15 and 16, we're going to be premiering a documentary, EDSA, the full story. Joining us tonight, architect June Palafox and Professor Ricardo Jose. Okay, how not to do it. Ito naman tayo, no, how not to do it. Pero, kanina may sinabi rin kayo, sir, kanina, Architect Palafox, na EDSA was supposed to be a corridor.
Transport corridor.
Transport corridor. Our problem is we started
It became a destination now because all the central business district are practically along the EDSA corridor. It's still surrounded by gated communities.
And the reason why all those central business districts are along EDSA or have direct access to EDSA is because?
Because of...
because a lack of planning?
Lack of planning.
Lack of planning, or when you say lack of planning, it's government. And I'm not just talking about this administration, I'm talking about all past administrations. It should have been government, right?
Yeah. Because actually, if you look at EDSA before, in the 1960s, 70s, but a lot of it was empty. It was grassland.
And it was nice.
And it was nice. And then you could see parts of it were zoned off. There were areas really for industrial development, medical plants, and this kind of thing. Now there's no zoning. The zoning's gone.
In that time, EDSA, they had an island of trees.
Yes.
So to segregate the fast-moving and the slow-moving, they remove all the trees. And for projects that I do in the country and elsewhere in the world, for every car, you must plant 10 trees to recover the oxygen.
Okay, sir, have you counted the trees in Metro Manila?
Like EDSA, if it has 300,000 vehicles a day, we need 3 million trees along EDSA.
Oh my God, I think we have less than 100.
Maybe talk to the lot owners and plant more trees. Like Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, they started Singapore. all trees planted along a major thoroughfare were tax deductible for the first 5 years. Because after 5 years, they can take care of itself. But looking at the Metro Manila was planned like half of a wheel, spokes of the wheel, 10 radial roads, and 6 ring roads. I have proposal now for number 7 and number 8. The 8th circumference road will connect also Cavite and Bataan with either a Bay Bridge or a tunnel. And that will also be used to tsunami or storm surge breaker before it hits Manila. And all of these ideas, they only listen, leaders only listen when foreign experts come here to tell us what to do.
Or people only listen when we have a disaster.
Just
when
like
we have Ondoy.
Like after Ondoy, I gave 23 recommendations to address the hazards before they become disasters. With this administration, I gave more than 100 recommendations already through architecture, urban planning, engineering to address the 18 hazards before they become disasters. But people remember me only when the disaster happens.
When there's a disaster. Right. You know, that's the same thing that Paolo Alcazaran always tells me. People only remember me when it's time for an interview because of a disaster.
There's a disaster, And unfortunately, for our country, elsewhere in the world, they listen more to us and they pay us well. In our country, even if you offer it, you are been accused of being an alarmist, but when the disaster happens, they copy some of our recommendations.
What is it in our history, Professor Jose, that makes us immune to common, not just common sense solutions, but to implementing them? I mean, we know what we're supposed to do, di ba?
I think the basic problem is we don't have a good understanding of history. We have a very shallow understanding. Okay, we have Jose Rizal, these commemorations, but what are the lessons learned? Now, we don't have too much on that. So I think partly it's the way it's taught in high school or things like that. But again, it isn't reinforced. So the problem is, while there are many lessons from the past, we don't really pick them up. And then every time there's a new administration, they want to reinvent the wheel. But actually, as the architect pointed out, there's so much before. And well, again, traffic in EDSA is not really that new, because in the 60s, if you remember, they were complaining about traffic in Guadalupe. There were problems with traffic already at that time. But they were planning. And again, why can't we project from this? It's not only looking at the past, but also projecting from looking at the past.
But now we have an even bigger problem, because it's not just the traffic anymore, like you're saying.
That's right.
We have MRT trains breaking down. And then,
and the LRT, we were the one, it was our group, Metro Plan 1976-77, who put forward the LRT. Because we evaluated various kinds of transport. And the LRT, supported by dedicated bus lanes, would have been the best, and with better sidewalks. But one thing about it, I've been asked many times, what's wrong with our country? Having visited more than 2,000 cities in 63 countries and have done work in 38 countries, more than 1,000 projects, one thing I observe, or success formula, number 1, visionary leadership, leaders with vision. Number 2, strong political will. Number 3, good planning, urban planning. And number 4, good design. Number 5, good governance or good management. You cannot have good planning without political will. You cannot go good governance without the plan.
Without anything else.
So our mess now, people create a budget without a plan. Elsewhere in the world, you plan, you program, you budget. Here, they create a budget get the cheapest consultant, cheapest contractor.
So it's not, so it's not about getting the cheapest. No, it's not like, government will save more, so this is the way to go. No.
Even the infrastructure elsewhere in the world, like I've worked in Dubai from the beginning of Dubai, and we observed Singapore and better run, managed countries elsewhere in the world. Infrastructure, always 3 alternative solutions. You compare the advantages, disadvantages. And one is do nothing. What will happen if you do nothing? And then you can compute now the opportunity loss. Like they say, if I may, it's said by others, not from me. Our opportunity loss because of infrastructure, especially traffic, $20 billion a year. I'm told that was a JICA study. Corruption is $10 billion a year. So the inadequate infrastructure is even double the corruption now for opportunity loss. And our biggest challenges are corruption, criminality and climate change, poverty, pollution, and somebody said too much politics, and the police. So these are all our challenges. We talk about it in the business community. So it's not all physical aspects. It's the visionary leadership, political will, good planning, good design, then good governance.
Okay. We're going to show you some snippets from EDSA, the full story. This one, for example, one of the anchors, David Santos, got on a bus on EDSA. Let's look at this. Well, anyway, we're showing snippets, like I said, from EDSA, the full story. So this portion is where David Santos gets in a bus, and I understand it was a real journey on EDSA. Also, we're going to show you in a little bit Mitzi Borromeo taking the MRT, and Jing Magsaysay, who anchored this entire documentary, driving on EDSA. Well, we're going to be showing that through the discussion, no? So that we can... All right, let's just roll that video, okay? Then let's keep talking about EDSA. All right, still with us, architect Palafox and Professor Ricardo Jose, historian. Itong issue about urban land use, kanina, you kept repeating that, no? Again, how are we going to fix this situation?
The private sector should also come in. Yes. Like elsewhere in the world now, in the American Planning Association, we had a big conference in Boston in 1998. When you have a big house in the middle of the city, you have a bigger carbon footprint because you're arrogating to yourself prime urban land resources. You are preventing more families to live closer to their places of work. You are encouraging more urban sprawl to encroach into the forest, into the farms. So if you have a big villa, you should be in the suburbs.
And suburbs meaning?
Maybe 50 kilometers from the city.
Okay. So that would mean what? Laguna or Bicol?
Canlubang, maybe.
Canlubang.
So maybe 50 to 100 kilometers around. Because the center of the city have shifted from Escolta into EDSA corridor. So big imbalance between jobs and housing. As I told you, CBD of Makati is 11 times the nighttime population. So you have to accommodate more dwelling units for the employees of Makati to be able to afford within walkable distance or bikeable distance.
So that they don't have big to travel from so far.
Even from, with all due respect, the planning of Quezon City, it's all single use together. Place to study together, place to live dormitory, instead of mixing them. One thing with Quezon City, they forgot about the commercial land use, mostly government and housing and education. So this commercial land use going to Quezon City were not part of the plan. It was morely government and housing. In the case of Makati, it's like putting Manhattan surrounded by Beverly Hills. So nowhere in the world can you see that. Only here. So we should encourage now these single-family homes, 2 stories, to make them at least 6 stories. You work downstairs, you live upstairs. So create more home offices now.
So we should be building
higher.
I remember before you doing building
vertical tourism.
Vertical tourism.
In fact, next week I'll be talking in China and Russia, if I get the visa, about tall buildings and urban planning. And the rest of the world listen to us about the advantages of vertical urbanism, which Singapore, Hong Kong, and our Asian neighbors have done, versus what we did is urban sprawl.
Sprawl. The suburbs, the American suburbs. Ginagaya natin ng kano.
If we followed American cities, maybe Boston would have been a good example, New York, Portland, San Francisco, not Hollywood and Los Angeles.
You said the #1 ingredient here is going to be visionary leadership. So what we're saying here is...
And political will.
The president himself will have to step in and say, okay, this is what we need to do.
Leadership, like I was talking to the former mayor of Chicago, and what type of Richard Daley, what type of government style you have? He said, government should be the exemplar, not the exempted. And climate change, all the government buildings, they address climate change.
But the problem with us is we have, 16, 17 mini kingdoms in Metro Manila. Hindi ba, Professor?
Yeah, that's a problem. Plus, of course, the type of government we have at the presidential election. You're preparing for the next election. You don't give too much time anymore to what's going on. So it's part of a problem that needs to be remedied.
Yeah. But how do we remedy the Metro Manila situation with mini kingdoms of 16, 17 different rulers, the Rajas and the
that's why even the whole of Metro Manila itself is, of course, you have all these small little leaders in each domain.
Yeah.
So I think Metro Manila was supposed to be created to try to address that problem, but it's not working in that way.
Oh, but we threw the baby out with the bathwater in 1986. So what do we do now? Should we go back? Should we have like a governor?
There should be something, perhaps a more cooperative thing, because you have Manila banning trucks, so it goes over to everyone
or Caloocan deciding last Friday, etc.
Yes, so it spills out. But what you have to have is a more cooperative approach. So you know that it's not just your domain you're protecting, but you're protecting.
Yeah. Is there such a thing as cooperation among all these mayors of Metro Manila?
At this point, I don't think there is, but there has to be an institution or something that will allow that.
An institution like what?
Mayor's meeting or convention.
If I may, elsewhere in the world, they have technocrats running the cities, and they're graduates of managing cities.
Yeah.
Whereas the mayors are just policy makers. And problems they cross political boundaries.
Right.
Flooding, criminality, garbage collection, and so on. And when we planned the Metro Plan Manila funded by the World Bank in 1976-77, it was 40 towns and cities. And we had a way of measuring the daily trips to work. So it was as far south as Santa Rosa and Bulacan and Rizal. But when Metro Manila was reduced to 17. And then other countries in the world, they do it by watershed to address flooding also. So from the highest point to the lowest point, this is your drainage area. And with the UNDP funded project in 1973, I was a scholar in UP that time. That's why I worked with government, because UN scholarship also. We look at the Manila Bay region. So Metro Manila, Central Luzon, and Calabarzon as one planning unit.
Yes.
And again, at the time we're talking about growth centers as counter magnets to the push of Metro Manila. As I mentioned earlier, year 2000, when I was doing work in Harvard, Metro Manila was the fastest growing city in the world. At that time, 60 persons per hour. New Delhi was only 47 persons per hour. London, Paris, New York, I think 5 to 7 persons per hour. Moscow was -2 per hour. So we should look at emerging growth centers all over the country and make them more attractive. Let's say the universities. Maybe they should be encouraged not to expand anywhere in Metro Manila, but expand elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there are some schools that are moving.
Yeah. The expansion should be
Laguna, di ba?
No, even all over the country now, not just even Calabarzon.
People should stop coming to Manila, di ba? We'll take a short break. News.PH will be right back. Stay with us.
EDSA, the most traversed thoroughfare in the metro. But the once hailed symbol of democracy has turned into a point of criticism among its passers-by and the people that dwell around it. Know the full story of EDSA and understand how its evolution throughout the years will shape the future of the Filipino.
Welcome back. You're still watching News.PH. I'm Hontiveros. We're still talking about EDSA. Still with us, Professor Ricardo Jose, historian of the UP Diliman, and architect June Palafox. Okay, let's go back to because kung visionary leadership ang pag-uusapan, so we talk about the president, but then
also
we have
the mayors.
The mayors.
The mayors. Political will.
What can be the solution there? Architect Palafox.
One is hire the right people, like more technocrats rather than the legal profession.
What do you mean by the legal profession?
They are the first-class
Abogado.
citizens in this country, and architects, urban planners, engineers, scientists. We are second-class citizens in our own country, whereas elsewhere in the world we get better recognition and being followed with our recommendations and paid better. Even, but I think we cannot afford to do that anymore. And even all these issues now, headline news, the DAP and PDA and pork barrel, but it's wrong to start with the budget. First, you must plan your program, then you budget with the feedback process. So even the sequence is wrong. And then looking at alternative solutions and look at the best before you, because everything is short-term and opportunistic.
Yeah.
What can be done within this term? It's not long-term and visionary. And in every plan that I get involved, including architecture work, I have what I call 3 Cs. The context, wider urban context. Then the connectivity, how you can connect. Then corridors, either visual corridors or physical corridors. And even doing buildings, we don't create architectural buildings as islands. I have the 5th facade. What I learned in architectural schools here before I went abroad was front facade, back facade, side elevations. I have the 5th facade. When you look down from above, how the buildings fit into the landscape, in the wider community, how you connect, not islands. We should do that even with cities. Let's say the higher ground cities, they may have bigger pipes, but the older cities, low-lying, liable to flooding, they receive the drainage with smaller pipes. So it's a no-brainer analysis. I've given so many things how to address all of this, because even disasters, 2004 studies, earthquake 7.2, 7 bridges will collapse.
Right, including Guadalupe.
Yeah, north and south of Pasig River will divide Manila, Metro Manila, and east and west of the fault line. Do we have contingency plans? Part of the traffic situation also, we don't have enough bridges to cross Pasig River. And I think in the Pasig River master plan that we work on, where the architects and planners, we need at least 13 bridges. Then if we cannot put vehicular bridges, maybe every 800 meters, pedestrian bridges. Anyway, we Metro Manilans, as surveys, we walk 400 meters. In Singapore now, they're doing the redevelopment planning for Singapore. Everything you need in a day should be within 10-minute walking distance.
Yeah, people might be wondering at this point, we're supposed to be talking about EDSA, but like we said earlier, we really have to talk about the wider, bigger context, no? Because ang EDSA is just a portion, although a major contributor to the entire problem. I want to ask about that proposal, was it DOTC na for the airport, halimbawa, mag-parallel runway.
Yeah. The best designed airports in the world, parallel, not crisscross. So again, our airport is how not to do it. Usually the terminal is in the middle and 2 parallel runways. And all best designed airport is more flexible even to add on terminals.
But okay, so we do that good design idea for NAIA. Ang problema naman natin, yung traffic sa NAIA.
Yeah, you have to improve the access. Like until now, why don't we have a monorail or LRT connecting NAIA with the major activity centers like the CBDs? And now a connection is being done with the gambling city. I mean the gaming city. But there's no connectivity to the CBDs. So let's say our plan for Araneta Center, we're also the planners, get city airport terminal. So you can check in your luggage in Araneta Center and take the LRT if there is a connection to me. Similarly, Ortigas Center, Ayala Center, if they could put an airport terminal. So you check in your luggage and you take public transit. These are no-brainer solutions. And I think we get back down with too much analysis paralysis.
We keep studying, Professor, ganun tayo. Ganun ba ang Pinoy? We're always studying, we're always analyzing. 30, 40, 50 years later, wala pa rin.
Look at circumference road number 7, number 5, number 6.
C6. Ang tagal ng pinag-uusapan.
1945 pa. So from concept to commitment to completion, it takes more than a lifetime.
My goodness.
Because of the analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
And no institutional memory.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there were good plans. I was part of the previous administration, and no corruption. Our master plan for Clark and Pasig River and NAIA, and we were paid through a competition.
Yeah.
And it was not being followed. The Laguna Lake plan, previous administration, is not being followed.
Paulit-ulit na
Actually,
cycle.
I think some people in government already recognized that by the 50s, and they said, you know, the presidential system, the president changes, the whole thing changed. So they created things like NEDA to try to transcend that. However, it's short-circuited. So even with NEDA, they're trying to implement long-term solutions. It still gets bogged down. So, and that's it, problem of institutions.
Like, if I may digress a bit, like I was part in the first 30 days of the Yolanda corridor. What I observed was people claim they want to coordinate, but they don't want to be coordinated. And government agencies are like vertical floors, vertical elevators without the floors connecting them. It's kingdom again. Look at EDSA corridor again, how not to do it. All this infrastructure is like a roller coaster going up and down, then you have the LRT, then you have these buses, jeepneys, even the color of clothes of the traffic people. Different city, different color. Why can't we even decide all taxis must be colored yellow? Why can't we decide bus drivers must be salaried? Not a boundary system. That's why they compete.
That's why they drive that way.
They drive that way. And we had put this forward in 1976. The lessons I learned in the more than 300 recommendations, I was team leader for development planning, Metro Plan Manila. I had used it in 38 countries. And they are better implemented pa. They even improve on it. Here we're still analyzing it, analysis paralysis.
Analysis. So, Professor, if given your expertise, how long should we be paralyzed by our analysis?
I think we shouldn't be paralyzed. I mean, looking back is good. Learn the lessons, but we should project. We should be able to project.
And at what time, at what point do we say, okay, tigil na yung pag-aaral na yan, gawin na natin? When? Right away? What? 10, 5 years? We have this tendency to study an issue for 3, 5...
We study too long sometimes. Sometimes we don't consult the experts. So that's why we come up with faulty solutions sometimes. But again, sometimes you study something, then it changes. Now what we need perhaps is something that is some level of continuity. And then projection, and then not veering away from that particular direction.
It can be identified. Immediate action program, the first 100 days.
Immediate.
Short term until the end of 2016. Maybe medium term, a good milestone date that I've been putting forward is 2021. Because March 16, 2021, the Philippines will be 500 years old as Philippines. Then the long term could be 2025 to 2050. And if we do things right, we should be in the top 20 economies of the world by 2025. Then by 2050, number 16. There's so many. I think Filipinos are recognized as the best citizens of the world. Unfortunately, outside the Philippines.
If this administration can get things going and fix the solution, ito na siguro yung magiging legacy sana ni
Even the short term, what can be done within the next 600 days or 40,000 hours? Maybe fix the sidewalks. Make our cities walkable and bikeable. And then number 2, maybe cordon pricing. When you enter a place that's congested certain times of the day, you must pay more. The tollways, you pay double when you enter, free when you go out. The riverways like Manila Bay, Pasig River, and Laguna Lake, you can have ferry boats. And then legacy for the future, long-term plans, even if it's not recognized today. I think that there are so many available inputs, not foreign experts, who have done work elsewhere in the world, who can be tapped.
But you know, I notice every time, for example, you architect Palafox, diba, you've presented so many recommendations.
More than 100 recommendations.
More than 100. A few, what was this? 2, 3 years ago, hindi ba? Meron po kayong dinala ulit, ano? Pero para bang ang nangyayari palaging may sagot, palaging may counter. Bakit ganon?
Thanks for the responsible media. You're now doing the score sheet, not me anymore, checking. Because most friendly media, including CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, they asked for a copy of those 100 recommendations. And mind you, they told me they gave it to other countries already. Like
Okay.
Burma, they ask for a copy.
Oh, well, that's a comforting thought.
Yeah, Burma.
Myanmar.
They ask for a copy.
Yeah, but we have it here, but we're not.
That's Nobel Prize winners.
Yeah, if they get ahead of us, if Myanmar gets ahead of
Jakarta.
us,
I was in Jakarta. They asked for a copy.
Yeah. Talagang how not to do it. We're taking a short break. Please stay with us. News.PH will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching News.PH. I'm Pia Hontiveros. Still with us, Professor Ricardo Jose and attorney. Oh my God, that's not an insult, sir. No, I have many lawyer friends. Architect June Palafox. Why did I say attorney? Okay, wait. Kanina, nabanggit din ang Clark, kasi I was asking about parallel runway. Okay, ang problema naman natin, congestion in Metro Manila. And then there was that proposal, no? Okay, let's have Sangli as an airport. And then people were saying, why Sangli? Why not Clark? Halimbawa, I mean, ano bang problema natin?
We need 3 airports, as I mentioned earlier.
So we have NAIA.
My term paper in Harvard, year 2000.
Oo. So we can still use NAIA, sir?
Yeah. One for Calabarzon, one for Metro Manila, and one for Central Luzon.
Okay, so you will, so identify the 3.
One more.
So you will, so what airports? We're talking Sangli, NAIA, Clark?
Yeah, or elsewhere in Calabarzon. That's not to be Sangli. But if you do Sangli, my proposal before is a bay bridge or a tunnel connecting Cavite and Bataan. That would be my circumferential road number 8. A complete ring road, not a partial ring. But
Sangli itself would be limited.
It's also
access.
because it's a dead end. It's
Yeah.
like a peninsula.
Yeah, you have to have another.
You have to have a gateway to it, linking it with Bataan.
Yeah, because if you look at other cities, the airports have moved outside.
Right.
That's why I mean Tokyo, it's Narita is so far.
But Tokyo, they revive Haneda.
Yes, and that's why it's attracting more people now. But again, you have to pay the price. I think what we need if we're going to use Clark is we need the high speed transit.
Yeah.
In fact, I've been advocating aerotropolis, airport-driven cities, the whole country. Somebody was telling me, I forgot who it was, despite the mismanagement, I'm sorry to say, of all our airports in the country, airport cities, 62% of our GDP, because they have the airport. Yes. So in the evolution of cities, started with port-driven cities, ports. The second wave was railway-driven cities. The third wave was highway, freeway-driven cities. This century will be airport-driven cities because of global networking and so on.
Yeah. What do we do about MRT, LRT, PNR?
Yeah, it can still be
They're
done.
all functional. I think they're all functional still.
We have to upgrade. Like the MRT, it can take more rolling stock.
Yes.
You have to add more trains, and nothing was added the past 14 years. Nothing was added. Yeah.
And that's because of what, sino yung mga nandun sa...
I don't know the reasons why. I think you should get experts, technocrats, rather than other professions who are not technocrats.
But even PNR, they have new trains supposedly, but they don't have spare parts. It's always maintenance that becomes a problem.
I heard there's a new head of PNR, a technocrat.
Yes, I hope
I forgot his name.
Yes.
Mr. Dila or something, and they want to meet me to help them upgrade PNR.
Yeah, because PNR can really be a viable solution.
Yeah, because
it was better before. We have one of the longest railway in Asia before the war. Now we have the shortest.
Oh my goodness.
And
like
very,
you said,
very reliable before.
Myanmar is...
Like you can connect to railway now, and the next presidential balls, they should take note. All presidents were voted by the corridor from Lawag to Legazpi, from Lawag to Naga. So the next president should maybe look at for linking to railway, Lawag to Legazpi or Lawag to Naga. That corridor has elected all our presidents. A political analyst was telling me.
So we have to fix the tracks, improve it, add more trains.
They were stolen already.
And they are decoration now in some of the bigger houses.
They're made into knives and they're made into scissors.
In fact, the maglev, which they use in Shanghai, they came to see me about 15 years ago. They said a proposal to link the whole country. If you use maglev, from Batanes to Holo, 2 hours with the maglev. And another one that I was discussing with Mon Jimenez, Tourism Secretary, create the Yolanda Corridor as a Caribbean of the Far East. And I heard the Tourism Secretary is very good. Singapore Airlines will promote the Yolanda Corridor, Visayas, as the Caribbean of the Far East. So there are positive notes, but we have to pursue it.
Yeah, right.
But we're now back to EDSA Corridor.
Yeah, EDSA Corridor. I was about to say nga, EDSA ang topic natin. Umabot tayo sa Samar at Leyte. But, well, I mean, what can we do? We can't just fix EDSA. Okay, final words, Professor Jose.
Well, I think EDSA is actually a symbol, or it's a tip of the iceberg. The fact that we have traffic there, that we have management problems, is actually representative of Philippine society. It kind of reflects what the country is. So if that's solved, if more decisive steps are taken to solve it, that would also help the country as a whole.
Thank you, Professor Jose. Architect, not attorney, Palapas.
We've talked about opportunity loss. Yesterday in the Management Association of the Philippines International CEO Conference, there was a speaker, Mr. Phillips from Delwa. They're advising Singapore on managing Singapore. And I asked him, what are the opportunity loss? Can it be quantified? If you have lack of visionary leadership, lack of political will, lack of good planning, lack of good design, and lack of good governance and good management. And he says he can quantify it. In fact, Jericho already quantified the opportunity loss because of traffic, 20 billion pesos a year. So with that, we can do that. And the Philippines has so many great things, great people, beautiful islands, and so on. We only have that. And if we really address corruption, criminality, climate change, poverty, pollution, too much politics, and the police, I think we'll be a great country.
See, from EDSA to the country. Thank you very much to our guest tonight, Professor Jose. Thank you, sir, for joining us, and Architect Palafox. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And thank you for watching. This has been News.PH. I'm Hontiveros. See you again next Wednesday. Good night. Next week on Monday and Tuesday, September 15 and 16 at 8 o'clock in the evening, 9 News premieres a two-part special, EDSA, the full story. That's what we talk about tonight. Given EDSA's myriad of problems, there is we should do.
Yeah, how not to do it.
How not to do
the whole corridor of EDSA.
Yeah.
Like for instance, there are a hierarchy of roads, and the major thoroughfares are the highest. And where are the collector roads, distributor roads, access roads? They are in gated communities and gated military camps. So there are no parallel roads to EDSA. And we over-concentrate there. But we should not just look at traffic management, traffic engineering solutions. We should look at a wider urban planning aspect, the land use, then transportation planning, traffic engineering, and traffic management. I think our traffic planners and policymakers, they're only looking at traffic management and traffic engineering, not the urban land use transport, because they're only looking at the supply side. The demand side is the land use. Let's say, for instance, the Makati Central Business District is the daytime population is 11 times the nighttime population.
Good evening, this is News.PH, but it's not politics as usual. I'm Hontiveros. Much to discuss. Our guests, a historian from the University of the Philippines and the director of the Third World Studies Center, Professor Ricardo Jose, and the very famous urban and environmental planner, architect Felino June Palafox. Thank you, sir, Architect Palafox and Professor Jose. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Pia.
Thank you, Pia, for inviting us again.
Yeah. I guess everybody can say that we've all been traumatized by EDSA. Yes. Yes, nakakapagod na ba?
Yeah, and what's sad about it is I had the opportunity to come out with in a team of World Bank funded project, Metroplan Manila, 1976.
Yes, you keep repeating this.
I was 26 years old then. Now I'm 64, it's still the same. And I've helped 38 countries already after 1976.
Yeah. Okay, so what's our problem? We're very creative and imaginative about solutions. We know what we need to fix, and yet we cannot seem, when I say we, I mean government and people all together, no? As a nation. We can't seem to fix it. Ano bang problema natin?
It's really, we should look at the wider context. EDSA is one of the 6 circumferential roads put forward by the American Corps of Engineers in 1945. And EDSA was going to circumferential road number 4, 54 meters wide, built in 1954. That's why it was Highway 54. It was supposed to be a transportation corridor. Now it's everything. It's also a destination. In fact, EDSA now is being an urban laboratory as a case study for how not to do it all over the world. All over the world. They come and see me, what's the problem and what's the solution.
How not to do it.
Including students of architecture, urban planning, from Yale, from Cornell, from the UK, from Europe. And
how seriously, sir, they really come here and ask and look and check what is it about EDSA. This is not what we